Hey, how's it going? So, today I am going to talk about the subject of women as we're portrayed in media, but also attached to that is always going to be the reality of the situation. And this was not at all the way I intended to start uh, dealing with this subject because it feels like really heavy and significant to me because right now, um, in many ways, and it's just like it all kind of rolled down to the bottom of the hill into a pile over centuries. Um, is the way women have been treated in media and in reality by men, by other women, by organizations like schools and hospitals and wherever else, places where food is served, like, so-called women's jobs and women's place. There's a lot of talk about that. Um, Certain portions of society would like to see women be completely submissive to either the men they are directly attached to or just men in general, which I don't know if men realize this, but to some of us, that sounds crazy and not at all what we want. We are subservient, not by choice, and we have been made so. And the reason why I have kind of dawdled with starting this is because I didn't have all of the information that I wanted or needed to do this. But this is just one installment, and let it just be said that I don't have all of the information that I feel comfortable with yet. I mean, I don't have enough information, I guess is what I want to say. But just by chance, I started watching an A&E documentary series on the Playboy Mansion and Hugh Hefner and just the whole Playboy um, story, like the whole epic around like the man and what comes out in the show, which, a lot of times I'll say, man, I totally knew this was going to happen. And I'll say, to myself, well, you don't have to be psychic to know that. But over the years, I've said it so much that I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe you do have to be psychic to see these things. And the reason why I say that is because I looked at the Playboy Mansion from a pretty early age. I grew up in Hollywood. I was not attached to it. If I knew people that went there, which I'm sure I did, they didn't talk about it. And having seen this documentary, I know why, but it's not a surprise in any way. Well, I mean, it was some of it was shocking, but not really all that surprising. And I already screwed up because what I wanted to do when I began this, see, this is me freeballing. I didn't set up anything at all. I've just been thinking about it. But had I had I used a little structure here, I would have done what I thought about doing, which was at least making a handmade title card with the word Bacchanalia and the definition on it, just to display at the beginning of this, because this is like probably how all of this went wrong is in these temples of Bacchanal. But there was a very similar personality to Hugh Hefner and his bunny mansion and sort of outspreading of it. Boy, I mean, it was almost like a capillary action, like once it started spreading, all these little tiny tendrils of it sort of developed and were born and just reached into areas of society. Like that magazine reached men in a way that was more open, and therefore not at first, but it gradually became more acceptable that this magazine existed and what it did. And it had this Hefner invented ideal of the girl next door. So I'm not ready quite to talk about that because I want to talk about this other business that is so similar, and I can't believe that like someone hasn't mentioned it, but both of these places run by these men who are very similar. There is a aura of secrecy around it. There's an unspoken pact, like we don't talk about this, and it's more than that even because in both of these places the men running the places had the places wired for sound and video so they could capture anyone coming there to indulge in these fantasies or desires, dark ones, uh, using these women. And boy, using is the operative word here. Uh, and the other person I'm talking about, of course, is Jeffrey Epstein and his island. And he also had like sub bases of sexy scariness operations. Like they just got to take their slime show on the road. Like the plane, got to have the plane available. They both had planes. You think both of those planes didn't have yucky beds and couches on them with. Okay. Do you get where I'm going with this though? Playboy Mansion, just like Jeffrey's Islands and whatever other locations he had. Ooh, my nose is going to town. So one thing that I saw that he said a lot in print, he must have said it many times because I saw it in different places many times, unless they were just quoting each other, these publications. But I saw him in a video. I don't remember exactly what the question was that he was asked about the islands, but what they did there, I think, was along the lines of the questions like what's it about? Why is it the island have to be private? Why is it like it looks like a big secret? And he was like, oh no, it's no secret, everything's casual, it's cool, like it's a party, we just like to have a bacchanal. And he just cocked his head in a certain way and smiled this gross little smile of knowing that you know even before he knew of him and his use of that word, I've kind of understood that a bacchanal was a drunken, maybe even drugged, just craziness that you let go of your most base desires, or you let yourself free to indulge in these things. And this is what he was saying was happening on his island. And I know that in mythology, there were temples erected to the sky, Bacchanal, and that there were priestesses, but it just seemed like the Church of Carnal and other uh, indulgence, overindulgence, free indulgence. But, free is so conditional because in both places, the women that they kept there, once they got them there, they get them young and ignorant or dumb, and sort of gradually take away their control. Just like you hear about these men that are abusers, that they're great when you first meet them and everyone loves them, and then once you get hooked up together and you're living under the same roof, you're not allowed to have friends, you're not allowed to have family, you're not allowed to have phone calls. With somebody who even at work finds ways to keep an eye on you so that you find that you feel like you cannot move, you are oppressed, you are like someone else's chattel and your own, and you are not even allowed to have thoughts. So that is wrong. That sounds bad. It is bad. That's why people have to escape these situations, and that's why you hear people that were on that island of Epstein's where they were trying to escape, and they were always able to be found because even outside was wired for video and sound, I guess. Like that, I mean, I guess that appeals to men, and I'm not, I say I guess it does, but I have met so many people over the past few years, like on the dating site, where that's like right where they go is like They want to make you subdued. They want you to submit to whatever they want to do to you, and they want to like degrade you and humiliate you and do things to you that like are hateful. And that's weird to me, that that's like what men think now. Like I was just watching Saturday Night Live. I had recorded it and I was watching it. Thank God I didn't watch it this morning because I would have lost my mind. Made me kind of angry that the musical guest, the words that he started singing to his song, are pretty much about bondage sex, just like right out there. And it's like, it ain't cool, man. If people are not already into that, it's just not cool. Like they don't understand. It's ugly and it's weird. Unfortunately, I understand it better than I'd like to, and I still think it's ugly and weird. But I have to admit that there's something about it that I'm drawn to, and this has just like been a strange feature of my life, like just sex in my face. Never how I want it or what I want, but it's just always been there. So I'm actually making it this day in a period of a lot of humans that are aware of what's going on right now that they're not talking about in the news. That's it's on a spiritual level, but I'm doing a lot of clearing, so it's not even all just my stuff, but stuff that maybe throughout my various incarnations I have built up all this black gunk that has to do with sort of negative sex, and I'm clearing that, and it's a weird feeling to be going through, in a weird place to be. But I'm watching this guy on this song, and it's like the first words out of his mouth are that stuff. And then I had recently tried to watch a video of Bruno Mars and Anderson Paak, and he was just abusive talk to some woman in the song, and it's just like, is this all the guys now? Because I don't really date that often, and I mean, boy, I have stopped before for other reasons, but this is really making me like, wow, I guess there's just no hope. But that's just my little personal piece, and that's how having these things in the world affect me and everyone else. Like, you didn't hear the kind of things that you hear about Jeffrey Epstein until about Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion and the whole Playboy experience thing, until the series came out. And all of these like they wrote books and people have talked about it, but it was kept on the down low. As I said, Hefner filmed people the same way that Epstein did, and so he would have them in a compromising position enough to keep quiet what went on there. And I don't know if he was blackmailing people like Epstein is rumored to have, but just emotional. I mean, for money, but definitely he was blackmailing them somehow. And there was, like I said, it wasn't surprising to learn this, but what was a surprise was the way that Hefner, I'm talking about now, kept those women. And I hate to use that word, kept the women. That's kind of how they were. They went in there thinking that they were making a bargain and an agreement, but it was more like they were signing away more than they realized, because like I said, he could get them young and not too bright or just not very informed, or you know, several of the women, would be there and think like, rightly so, especially in the 60s when women were just barely becoming like independent in the world and the women's revolution was starting. It was very difficult for women to get jobs in like a corporate area and get like a good administrative position or a high level position, because they're women. And it's, I'm not going to say it's totally different today. I think it's um, a little bit easier for women to get in on these jobs and get into these places, but it's the problem. There's still something there that prevents women from um, competing at the same level, excelling at the same level as men. Because of, I'm sure people have heard of the glass ceiling. If you haven't, well, you know how to look stuff up. Look it up. But there's things like the women's tax that men don't know that a lot of women don't know this either, but we get charged more for the same product that a man has or that's meant for a man, and they'll charge us like two, three times more for the same thing and just make the plastic pink or something. And when you think about that, do you not ask why? I mean, seriously, what did women do to deserve these like little slights? But okay, so I started to say how some women went there thinking, okay, well, this is my way to getting up the corporate ladder. And it seems like, oh my God, you have to dodge so many like hands trying to touch you and foul things being said to you or, expected of you because you're just there and they're not thinking about the men, not thinking of your position at all or respecting you at all. You're just like, oh, now there's a chick to grab in the boardroom. Or to think like you could be like making a presentation you worked on and you're completely serious and you're thinking this is going to help the business and then it's going to bring me this, that, and the other thing, power, prestige, money, respect. No, they're not listening to you. They're thinking about whipping your dress up over your head and flopping you onto the table and doing things to you while the other men are watching and or waiting their turn. So, I mean, I guess for the sake of keeping the business moving, women do actual work. I don't know how much credit they get or that they get to keep for what they've done, created, etc. But it's an attitude that is like universal. And it's like men's opinions or feelings about women, they don't seem. I mean, I know a lot of men that are, I think, not that way. You just don't know who you're dealing with behind closed doors, though, you know? But I think I know some good ones. Uh, but this bad attitude that a lot of men have toward women, where you're not respected as another person, another human being. You're like smaller, so I can throw you around and have my way with you, and I'm just gonna do it no matter what you say, whether you want it or not, because I can. And if you complain or cry or do something that upsets me because I'm hurting you and you're in pain, or some other way hurting you, like it angers them, and you're just supposed to like shut up and be a little rag doll for them to do whatever. And it's like, no, but if you think back any history, raping and pillaging, what do you think that's about? They're not going in and they're raping. It's not, hi, how you doing, pretty lady? Would you like to get raped? No, it's painful. It's violent. It's ripping and tearing of the clothes, of the flesh. It's bad. And that I understand that had to come from somewhere. So, okay, I'll just keep going back into the past. This is my theory. Something went wrong at these temples of Bacchanalia because there were women that were priestesses there. And I'm wondering, was it like a mutual thing? Was it a reciprocal give and take situation before something went afoul and the men turned on the priestesses? Because who do you think they would have been attacking first? They were right there and smaller, less powerful, and speaking up and being smart and intelligent smart, not like smart mouth. Although often your words will get turned into something like that, even if you may be saying something intelligent and it may be smart, but if it's smarter than the person hearing it, the man hearing it, this is just a conjecture, but it seems like they get mad and turn on you. And I'm just thinking of today, like just in a regular conversation between all women, all men, some women, some men, we are not good at listening to the other person. We are so in a hurry to say what we want to say that we honestly are just not listening to the other half of the conversation. And I am not saying I'm immune to that myself or to doing it. I mean, I have become conscious of it though, because I find myself waiting to say what I want to say until the other person is done speaking. And instead of like thinking of something else, I'll actually be listening to them. But I don't find that I get the same sort of quality of conversation in return. I can tell when I talk to people, I'll say my thing and then they'll answer me as if they didn't hear what I said at all, or they'll say what I just said in a different way, which they did hear me, but they don't know they heard me, so they're going to repeat back the same thing I just said. It is weird having conversations with people lately. And I don't know. I can only like work on my own self with that stuff. So I have been making the effort too, but it is extremely frustrating, is what it is, when you're speaking to someone and you know you're not getting the same kind of quality in return from your conversational partner. But going back to the past, I'm not sure. Like, I'm just getting pieces of this. I don't even, because I'm getting it, it's like something is coming to me from outside. So I'm getting flashes of this. Like, this, I mean, and I'm getting chills. Like, something happened in those temples that totally changed the tide between men and women. Goosebumps. Okay, so that feels like I'm right. um, and I don't know what it was, but man, we gotta fix it because it is detrimental to the healthy growth of society. Like, speaking of clearing ancient wounds and hurts and whatever else kind of dark garbage is in your bin, we need to clear that out. We need to transmute it into something more positive. We need to make changes that are beneficial to everyone. So, coming back to today, or closer to today, modern, more modern times, but not quite today, the Playboy Mansion. So, like, it was every time that it was open, it was a time of liquor and drugs. Like, there's never a time where there's not a wave of liquor and drugs. And I don't know who doesn't notice that, but it's the truth. If you look back, you can see it every time. So, there has always been liquor and drugs at the Playboy Mansion. And so, here's a creepy thing I learned about Hefner's weird girl next door obsession. Girl next door must be cute, look a certain way, must please the eye according to the Hefner standards. So bleach blonde, thin, Caucasian, uh, pleasing as far as he's concerned, um, uh, just like very much open to whatever he wants. You're basically like his love servant, sex doll, love toy thing, but his kind of love is weird to me. It involves like watching other people do things to the other person, which in circumstances that can be okay. But this dude was not doing it that way. He was like either keeping it all for himself or using it as blackmail to either use against the girls who already were under his sway completely once they were like a playmate or whoever living in his house, but also the men they were with. So these women, grown women, had to be in the house by 9 p.m. What? Okay, that is no. Once I'm an adult, you don't tell me when and where I am. That's my job. I go where I want to be and I leave when I'm ready to go. And like, no, I already had a set of parents. You grow up and you leave home to not have to deal with that. So maybe it seems like a little bit a small deal to you, but it's like a big deal to me. That's like somebody stepping on your literal freedom. So that didn't feel right. Then you have to have this old man that constantly wants to have sex with you, but like you and a few other people, you and some other girls and men, and then here's something that is really like, wow, you really hate women. Making women do sex acts to dogs. I didn't even know how to articulate everything that's wrong with that, but you know, you can't, if you're this girl in the house of this man is like paying your whole way, like your whole your living arrangement, any money you get is coming from this guy. Even though you may be working for the Playboy organization and millions are being made off of your face and form, you're not really getting the full benefit of all of that. So that can't feel great. Um, you're basically a kept person, an indentured servant, a slave, however you want to call it. Your life and your freedom is not your own. And there's money being made off of you, and you're not getting it, and you should be. Because it's not easy to bear your soul, and it's really not easy to bear your body, and then to bear your body and have other people doing things to it that maybe you don't want to do, or maybe they've here this is a big thing with, I think, both of those places, Epstein's places and Hefner's places, was I think they like to drug women, and they talk about it in the show, like the women having lost time and finding out later what happened because of the stupid hidden cameras sometimes, and or being told by someone, you know. So, and that was pretty much all Hefner controlling that sort of part of it. But like I said, he had a lot of information that people maybe wouldn't want to get out. And there's a newscaster. She it's a woman, and she works for one of the big ones, one of the big networks. And there was a gentleman who also works there, or works. I don't know if they worked at the same network, but they both worked in networks, and he worked in sports because he used to be a sports guy. And I remember one morning, I'm like getting ready for work or whatever, and the two are on the show, and they're cordial or whatever, and he's like really like plastering on the charm we're trying to, like all smiles and stuff, and she's obviously very cool to it, very uh, politely disinterested, and also like defensively deflective is what I was seeing. And I was kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? And the guy says, hey, I've asked you like several times, you want to go out? And it's like, dude, why are you asking her on television in front of the world? Like, what, are you trying to embarrass her into doing it? And she was like, no, 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 like just demurred politely. And well, he wanted to ask again, and his eyes were getting bigger, and he was starting to like his breathing was starting to change. And I think whoever was filming or whoever the director was must have seen like how her declining to go out with him was making him react, and the segment was taken away. But I always remembered it, and now I remember it in a whole different way because this guy used to go to that mansion, and apparently his kink is to beat the shit out of you until he breaks jaws and bones and dislocates joints. Like, you didn't get enough of that when you were the sports guy, and you want to do it to women. Like, what is that about? Right? But probably none of these women at the mansion did anything to him. I know this woman on the news didn't do nothing to the guy or didn't do anything to him except decline his invitation. But I'm thinking she's been around for a long time. Uh, she's out of not out of California, but everywhere is Hollywood on TV. So I'm gonna say she got word of his proclivities, and also uh, looking back on her previous relationships, he ain't her type. And I know, like, for me, like, I don't have a type. I don't pretend to have a type because I always like somebody different, like every time. So, but that's just me. She may have a type because she seemed to have, like, anyway. I think she had an idea like where this guy was coming from, what he was like, and other people went there too that have gotten in trouble with the law. In fact, I'll just say it: O.J. Simpson, and it was there were before Nicole Brown Simpson and the young man. Please forgive me, I don't remember his name, but the young man that went to return her glasses that came to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and got killed too. There were police reports that were talked about after that murder happened that went on for years about domestic violence between her and O.J. Simpson. So some of this stuff was out there. Like, you know who else went there? Bill Cosby. And you know what he was doing there? Drugging women to have sex with them. I mean, these women were there and they didn't necessarily, I don't know who they wanted to be having sex with. Some of them did, but I didn't hear anyone say they liked being drugged and abused or raped or whatever it is because it's not sex, it's not consensual if the other person is unconscious. And I think that it shows a really weird side of him because the desire to do that for so long, that's his thing. And it makes me think, dude, you really want to have sex with somebody dead, don't you? Like, unconscious, can't talk, can't move, can't respond. That's next to dead, except they're warm and breathing. Sorry, I don't. It's just what else can I think? And so it's a weird thing. It's like the men want the women, and they want them nothing more than to rip them apart and destroy them and degrade them and break them down. And then when you're upset and basically devastated and broken when this happens to you and everyone acts like it's not a big deal, including some of the other women at this mansion, apparently, like, that would have been really hard. Although I've experienced something similar, and it is really hard to have the people that you expect to be caring about you acting like this thing that's almost destroyed you is no big deal, and that you're lying about it for attention. It's like, wow. So it's rough. It's rough in the world being a woman, and I know that men will have a response to this as well. What I'm saying, and I'm not trying to say it doesn't happen to men. I'm going to actually get to that. I plan to do something similar to try and get to the root of what's going on with men. So here's a little thought on that note. In sort of not really researching, but because I want to do it somehow, stuff about it just keeps coming to me. I came across something and learned that in the past, we know that there were matriarchies where women ruled things, but there were times where women were, you know, as bad as I'm saying men are to the men, and probably to women too. Uh, it's just kind of like who is wearing the pants in the situation for a while, I think. And just some people are, you know, mean and violent, and I don't know. I mean, there's better, deeper psychological ways to describe that, but I'm not a shrink, so I can't do that. I can only discuss it in terms that I can come up with. But so there was a reason at some point for men to feel a deep wound and fear of women, or a desire to retaliate, that goes way back. Like all of this stuff, like everybody's got to be feeling what I'm feeling. Um, like anxiety, they don't understand why, and like sadness all of a sudden for no reason, or sad when something was sad but not that sad, and you're just like falling apart. You're like, what is going on? It's all of this ancient ancestral old bad crap clearing, and it puts everybody at the same time. So it makes for you see, you can't see because this crazy camera. It makes for like a wavy floor, like an uneven surface, so you can't get your bearings, and it's always moving and it's always changing. Everything right now is fast, fast, fast. Things are happening fast. Changes are happening fast. What we're paying attention to changes fast, 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 and it started like before now. I think like the 24-hour news cycle was almost like a prep for being able to deal with everything coming at you all the time so fast, so hard, like it is right now. So, I have a theory about why women maybe pissed off men so badly for so long. Just a theory. I may have mentioned it here before in a different video, but here we go. I think it might be possible that a woman made the first eunuch, and maybe it became maybe at first it was like something happened, a betrayal, and it made this woman so angry that this was her answer. Sort of like Lorena Bobbitt. Look her up. Lorena Bobbitt, two B's, two T's. Well, actually, I guess she would have three B's in Bobbitt. But anyway, if you're curious to know what that reference was about, look her up. But I could see maybe some retaliation from something that happened to a priestess in the temple of Bacchanal. Ended up in some other situation, like on the run, moved away somewhere else, remade her life. And then again came into a situation with a man where she felt trapped and betrayed and got angry, and maybe waited until he was asleep at night and relieved him of his manhood. Scrambled his eggs or whatever it is. And I could see men holding a grudge about that for a long time. I could see that becoming like a cellular memory for generations of men. Like, I get it. Because women give the life, men help give the life. But if you take that bit of power, that I don't know why this is, but I've come to an understanding that it is threatening to men that women can give life. I mean, we can't do it without the help of a man, but without a lot of intervention, a man can't do it at all. So, on some level, I'm thinking that's, like a little pee under people's mattresses or pebble in their shoe. Then it's not that irritating, we think, so we just leave it there, and it turns into like whatever we got going on, whatever this dynamic is with the men and the women. It's not good, but it had to start from somewhere, and I'm thinking it started from one like little thing, like a cavity can turn into an abscess tooth. So say this woman made the first eunuch, and then it just became her stamp, and she became a serial genital killer, and maybe it seemed like a good idea to other women, and they took it up, and it became a whole thing. And can you imagine, like, hundreds of men or swarms of men running away from women when they see them because they know if they try to go to sleep, they could wake up with no nuts. I'm just speculating here, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to make it make sense to myself. But whatever it is, I am sorry that it happened to them. Uh, I most certainly wouldn't do it today myself. Hopefully, I would not put myself in a situation where that kind of action was required of me because of some kind of action somebody else took against me. I would like to see all of us rise up out of that. That's bad muck. Like, we don't need to be in there anymore. It's hurting us. Everyone, it's hurting everyone. So, I guess that's all I really wanted to say. It's just some things I noticed about the treatment of men and women to each other, really. Although, from my vantage point, it feels like a lot worse that we're getting from the men. Uh, it's like we have institutionalized racism that people pretend they don't understand. There's also institutionalized chauvinism and uh, machoism, destructive, toxic manhood. And I'll probably talk about this more. And this, whew, yeah, whew, indeed. So until the next time, and I want to illustrate some other things. And hopefully, it'll be, well, I'm sure it'll be a lighter thing to talk about. So, appreciate your indulgence. Thank you, and good night.